April 17, 1944. Dawn hasn't arrived yet. The world is still dark, cold, and unsure of itself. Somewhere in the dense pine forests outside Cassino, Italy, a young American private named Daniel Mercer pushes aside a curtain of wet branches and steps forward, alone. He doesn't know it yet, but he has just crossed the invisible line that separates his battalion from the enemy. No one walks with him. No one speaks. Behind him, an entire company waits, watching that faint, shadowy outline disappear into the undergrowth. They call his job the point. And in the next few minutes, the direction of the entire mission will depend on what he hears, what he sees, and whether he survives the first burst of gunfire. You can almost feel the weight on his shoulders, the silence so heavy it presses on his ears, the smell of damp earth, the slick mud gripping his boots. Every step feels too loud. Every breath seems like it might give him away. He moves like a ghost, nerves wound tight, eyes peeling the darkness for shapes that do not belong to the forest. Most soldiers hated being point man. Few volunteered. But someone had to go first. Someone had to enter the unknown. Mosa lifts his hand, touching the small compass pinned inside his jacket. It isn't regulation. It belonged to his older brother, a surveyor back home in Ohio. "You'll need this more than I do," he had joked. But now, in the pre-dawn gloom, the compass is the only thing that feels steady. Everything else, his heartbeat, his thoughts, the world itself, trembles. The forest changes as he moves deeper. The trees feel closer. The air feels still. And then, faintly, he hears it. Boots scraping rock, metal shifting, a whispered command in a language he barely understands. German. Close. Too close. He freezes. The entire battalion behind him depends on what he does next. One wrong step, one snapped twig, and the forest will erupt in gunfire. The ridge ahead is supposed to be clear. Intelligence had insisted the Germans pulled back 2 days earlier. But Mosa knows, instinctively, suddenly, that this isn't true. They are still here. They are waiting. His fingers tighten around the strap of his rifle. Should he fall back? Move forward? Observe a little longer? He lowers himself slowly, silently into the brush, forcing his breath to slow. A few yards ahead, 2 dark shapes emerge, German sentries, rifles slung casually, talking quietly. They are relaxed. That's good. Relaxed enemies are predictable. But as he watches them, something even more unsettling comes into view. A wire, thin, low, almost invisible, running across the path the battalion is supposed to advance through. An explosive tripwire. A single man had to find it. A single misstep would have killed dozens. This is why the point man goes first. This is why his job is the most dangerous. Mercer inches backward, retreating the way he came, counting each step. 12 paces to the old fir tree. 15 to the fallen log. 23 to the narrow gap in the rocks. The forest hasn't changed, but now everything feels sharper, more alive. Shadows seem to lean closer. His ears ring with the sound of his pulse. He needs to warn them. But as he pivots to slip behind a cluster of dead branches, a faint click snaps the silence in half. He stops cold. It wasn't a mine. It wasn't a rifle. It was the unmistakable sound of a safety catch being switched off, directly behind him. Mercer doesn't breathe. A German patrol must have been shadowing the sentries, moving parallel to the line. And now they are right on top of him. He crouches lower, trying to become part of the earth. His fingers sink into the wet soil. The forest seems to shrink. Footsteps draw closer. 3 of them, maybe 4. They speak softly, but not casually. These men are alert. Checking. Searching. Did they hear him? Did they see movement? For a moment, he imagines what his company is doing right now. Probably whispering. Probably wondering why he hasn't returned. Probably debating whether to send another man, though they know what that would mean. 2 lives lost instead of 1. The footsteps stop. A beam of light sweeps the darkness. Sharp, white, thin. A flashlight. It cuts across the leaves, inches from his boots. He tucks himself lower, letting the forest swallow him. The light stops, right on the place where he'd stepped minutes earlier. The soldier examines the prints, murmuring to another. Their tone changes, tense, alarmed. They know someone's out here. Mercer knows is running out of time. If they spread out, if they sweep the brush, he'll be found. And if is found, the Germans will know an entire battalion is preparing to move through this sector. He has one chance, a dangerous, reckless, razor-thin chance to slip away. He waits for the flashlight to pass, lets 3 heartbeats go by, then moves. Not backward, not sideways. Forward, deeper into the thickest part of the forest, where the brush is dense and the pine needles mask sound. It's counterintuitive. It's exactly why it might work. He lifts each foot carefully, placing it where the ground looks softest. Inch by inch, he slides deeper into shadow. The Germans keep talking. They haven't heard him. Not yet. But as he steps behind a fallen trunk, something glints in the beam of fading moonlight. A metal stake. A second wire. A mine almost completely buried in the dirt. He's walked into a minefield. The battalion behind him doesn't know this corridor is trapped. They don't know they are marching toward disaster. Mercer's throat tightens. The only thing more dangerous than staying here is leaving. Because now the Germans have stopped talking. Now, the forest feels different. Now, a new sound rises in the darkness, faint, rhythmic, organized. Boots. Marching. More than a patrol. A full German reinforcement squad is moving toward the same ridge his battalion plans to capture at dawn. He needs to escape the mines. He needs to warn his men. He needs to survive the next 60 seconds. And he has no idea how. Mercer's breath trembles in his throat as the marching grows louder, steadier, more deliberate. This isn't a patrol anymore. This is a unit on the move. 20 men, maybe more. Their boots crunch the gravel in unison, a chilling reminder that the quiet forest he slipped into moments ago is about to become a battlefield. He forces himself to stay still. Stillness is survival. Every twig around him feels like a trap. Every pine needle threatens to betray him. The minefield beneath his feet suddenly feels alive, humming with danger. One wrong shift of weight, one instinctive step backward, and the entire forest floor could erupt into a storm of metal and fire. He closes his eyes for half a second. Think. Think like a point man. Think like someone who will not make it home unless he outsmarts the darkness. He carefully lowers himself to one knee, keeping his weight centered. The soil here is soft, soft enough to hide mines, but also soft enough to show faint impressions. If the Germans laid this field themselves, they would have avoided stepping in certain spots. That means markers. Subtle ones. Barely visible in moonlight, but visible to the men who placed them. His eyes scan the ground. Slowly, methodically. There. A faint bend in the grass. A snapped reed. The smallest exposed patch of undisturbed earth. To anyone else, they would look like nothing. But to a trained eye, they form a pattern, a safe path carved through death. Mercer begins to follow the delicate trail back the way he came. Each movement is deliberate, calculated. He reaches forward with one trembling hand to test the soil, before shifting his weight. His fingertips brush across the earth, feeling for resistance, for metal, for anything that does not belong. Behind him, the Germans march past, somewhere between confident and exhausted. Their boots echo like distant thunder. If any of them had angled just a few degrees toward the brush, if any flashlight had swept 1 inch to the left, they would have spotted him. But the forest, thick and ancient, keeps its secrets. For now, Mercer reaches a small dip in the ground, a depression barely 2 feet long. He remembers stepping over it earlier, unaware that a mine rested just inches away. Now he moves like a man tiptoeing across glass. Sweat drips from his forehead despite the cold. His chest tightens with the effort of staying silent. Then, something shifts. Not under his feet. Behind him. A whisper. A low one. Too close. Mercer freezes. His muscles lock. Even his heartbeat feels loud enough to give him away. Someone has fallen out of the marching column. A German soldier mutters softly, as if annoyed. Boots shuffle. Leaves crackle. He's cutting away from the formation, straight toward Mercer's position. Mercer lowers himself flat against the earth, pressing into the pine needles until they stab into his skin. He doesn't dare blink. He barely dares think. The German stops just a few paces away. He unbuckles something, probably his canteen, and takes a long drink, sighing. The casualness of it all feels surreal. Two soldiers, inches apart. One quenching thirst, the other fighting for his life in absolute silence. Mercer's fingers ache from clenching the dirt. A bug crawls across his knuckles. He wants to swat it, brush it off, do anything, but the smallest movement could be fatal. The German finishes drinking, pauses, turns. He notices the grass. The reed Mercer brushed moments earlier has shifted slightly, barely, but it's enough to draw suspicion. The German kneels, running his hand along the ground. Mercer feels the world collapse into a pinpoint of terror. If the soldier steps forward, he will trigger a mine. The explosion will kill him instantly, and Mercer along with him. The forest holds its breath. The German stands, hesitates, then steps back the way he came, apparently satisfied the disturbance is nothing but a wandering animal. He trots to rejoin the column, vanishing into the rhythmic march until the sound fades into the trees. Mercer exhales, shaking, and resumes his escape. Minutes pass. Long ones. Heavy ones. He retraces his steps inch by inch until at last, his boot touches familiar soil. Safe soil. He pulls himself behind a log, taking his first real breath since the nightmare began. But he can't rest. Not yet. Because the danger is no longer here in the minefield. It's moving straight toward his battalion. Those German reinforcements will reach the ridge before sunrise. If Mercer doesn't warn his men, the attack will turn into a slaughter. He crouches low, scanning the forest for movement. When the path appears clear, he slips back into the trees, faster now, still cautious, but fueled by urgency. Branches scrape his arms. His boots sink into mud. The dawn wind pushes through the canopy, carrying the faint scent of smoke. Allied smoke. His close. He breaks through a line of thick shrubbery and finally sees them, the silhouettes of his company, huddled low among the trees, rifles raised, waiting for a signal that never came. Mercer moves toward them, waving one arm low, signaling friendly approach. The nearest sergeant spots him and gestures frantically for silence as Mercer slips into the formation. "You're late," the sergeant whispers. "We were about to send." "Don't." Mercer cuts him off, voice barely audible. "They are here. Germans. Dozens. Maybe more. And the path, mines. All of it. We can't go that way." The sergeant's face drains of color. A single-point man just saved 80 lives. He grabs his radio operator. "Get battalion HQ. Now." Mercer kneels in the dirt as the realization sinks in. If he had missed that wire, if he had taken one wrong step, if he hadn't heard those German voices, the forest would still be silent, but his entire company would be dead. The radio crackles as orders arrive. Plans shift instantly. A new route. A new timetable. A new attack vector. All because one man walked into the unknown and walked back out again. But as the sergeant turns to brief the men, a chilling thought flashes through Mercer's mind. He's only the point man for the advance. When the assault begins, someone else will have to walk into danger first, again. And sometimes, that someone is him. Mercer doesn't have long to gather himself. The forest is waking now, colors bleeding into the sky, light pushing back the darkness in slow, fragile strokes. Dawn is minutes away, and with it comes movement, orders, and the unmistakable tension of men preparing for combat. The battalion shifts quietly. Weapons loaded. Boots tightened. Packs adjusted. Every man checks his gear with silent urgency, knowing the next few hours may define their fate. The sergeant returns to Mercer, eyes fixed with a look he's given many point men before, a mix of gratitude and quiet dread. "Command wants us to advance along the riverbed instead," he whispers. "It's narrow. Rocky. Visibility is terrible." A short pause. "They need you up front again." Mercer nods. He expected this. He always expects this. Because a point man isn't chosen for convenience. He's chosen because he thinks differently, moves differently, survives differently. Not out of luck, but out of instinct sharpened by danger. He's the man who sees what others miss, and bays what others fear. Mercer adjusts his helmet strap and steps forward again. This time, he's not slipping into a silent forest. This time, 80 men are waiting for his cue, ready to surge forward the moment he signals. If he fails now, he wouldn't just die alone. He would die with the guilt of leading his entire battalion into disaster. The riverbed cuts through the terrain like a scar, deep, narrow, lined with jagged rocks smoothed by centuries of rushing water. Now, the river is low, a trickle weaving between stone. The men follow single file, press tight, knowing an enemy ambush here could trap them like fish in a barrel. Mercer takes his first careful step into the rocky channel. His boots slip on wet stone. The air is colder here, funneled between cliffs. The soundscape changes too, water dripping, pebbles shifting, the soft clatter of loose rocks. Every noise is amplified. Every mistake could echo. He crouches low, testing the terrain piece by piece. Unlike the forest, where sound is muffled, this riverbed betrays every movement. One misplaced foot could send rocks skittering ahead of him. One clumsy shift could give away their entire approach. Behind him, the company moves like a long, living shadow, stretching back into the woods. A raven calls overhead, a harsh, sudden croak that nearly startles Mercer into reaching for his rifle. He steadies himself, breath slow, vision sharp. Then he sees it. Not an enemy, not a trap. Something was. Boot prints. Fresh ones. German hobnail soles, the kind that leave a distinctive pattern in dirt. They zigzag across the riverbed, half-washed but unmistakable. There are many of them. Maybe a squad. Maybe more. And all facing west, toward Allied lines. Mercer crouches, touching one print lightly. It's damp. Recent. The enemy moved through this exact path sometime in the last hour. Which means they know the riverbed. Which means they know someone might try to use it. Which means they could be waiting just around the bend. He signals a halt. The sergeant, 30 feet behind, freezes instantly. Silence spreads through the line like a ripple. Mercer creeps forward, inching along the cliff wall. He leans against the cold stone, listening for breath, rustling fabric, even the faint metallic click of a bolt being drawn back. But there's only the soft trickling of water. He takes one slow step forward. Then another. The riverbed curves sharply left. Visibility drops to nothing. Whatever lies beyond this turn is hidden completely, a perfect ambush point. Mercer presses himself against the wall, letting the rough stone scrape his jacket. He lowers his body, making himself small. He knows how these traps work. He's studied them, lived through them, narrowly avoided them in Italy, in North Africa, in every place the war has dragged him. If he pokes his head out now, he'll die. Even a glint of movement could spark gunfire. Instead, he reaches into his pocket and pulls out something small and mundane, a smooth pebble. He weighs it in his palm. Then, with a gentle flick, he tosses it down the riverbed in the opposite direction of where his men wait. The pebble bounces once, twice. On the third bounce, the world erupts. 3 German rifles fire simultaneously, sharp, crackling flashes bursting from just beyond the bend. Bullets slam into the rock wall, spraying stone fragments like shrapnel. The sound echoes in deafening waves, bouncing through the ravine. The ambush is real, deadly, close. Mercer ducks lower, heart pounding, ears ringing. The Germans fire again, short, controlled bursts, aimed at the sound of the stone. He clenches his jaw. They are disciplined, well-trained, patient enough to wait for a target, smart enough not to waste ammunition. The kind of soldiers who won't fall for a trick twice. Mercer signals frantically to the sergeant, enemy ahead. Ambush position. 3 rifles. Maybe more. The sergeant nods and relays the message down the line. The entire company drops into cover, bodies pressed against rock and dirt. Now comes the real test. Point men aren't just scouts. They are problem solvers, thinkers, survivors. If Mercer backs off now, the entire battalion must rear out, again, losing precious hours and risking discovery by those German reinforcements he heard earlier. If he advances recklessly, he'll die and take half his company with him. There has to be another way. Mercer scans the cliffs. The left side is smooth stone, unclimbable. The right side is jagged, broken, filled with cracks that might support a careful ascent. Above, thick brush overhangs the rim, offering concealment. He looks back at his men, then at the cliff. He knows what he has to do. He slings his rifle across his back, digs his fingers into the first crevice, and begins to climb. The stone is cold and slick. His boots struggle for purchase. Pebbles crumble under his grip. He moves slowly, silently, knowing the Germans below could hear even the faintest scrape if he slips. Hand over hand, foot over foot, breath controlled, mind steady. At 10 feet up, the wind shifts, carrying the faint smell of gun oil and cigarette smoke from above the bend. The ambushes are right below him, close enough that he can hear one of them muttering about the misfire. Mercer reaches the lip of the ravine, pulls himself over the edge, and disappears into the thick undergrowth. From up here, the battlefield transforms. The Germans, hidden perfectly from below, are fully exposed from above. 3 rifles. 1 machine gun nest. Sandbags half buried in mud. A deadly choke point disguised by stone and shadow. Mercer's throat tightens. If he signals his men to attack now, they'll be cut down. The milligram 34 alone could tear apart the entire line before anyone fires back. He needs to neutralize it first. Carefully, silently, he unslings his rifle and crawls toward the ridge, inch by inch, the barrel sliding through brush as dawn light reveals the outlines of the enemy below. He settles into position, steadies his breathing, and lines up his sights. The safety clicks off with a soft, lethal snap. Down below, the German gunner shifts his weight, unaware that death has just settled above him. Mercer tightens his finger on the trigger, ready to strike first. Before the forest explodes, Mercer exhales slowly, letting the cold morning air settle in his lungs. From his vantage point above the ambush, he has a clean view of the German machine gun nest, its barrel jutting forward, sandbags packed tight, the gunner leaning lazily against the weapon as if guarding a quiet road rather than a kill zone. The 2 riflemen are positioned slightly behind him, crouched low, scanning the riverbed for any sign of movement. They are tense, alert, but not expecting an attack from above. No one ever does. Mercer eases himself farther into the brush, careful not to disturb a single leaf. His rifle rests snugly against his shoulder, sights aligned on the gunner's helmet. At this range, 1 shot is all he needs. But he doesn't fire yet. Not because he doubts his aim, but because firing now would spark chaos too early. He needs to eliminate the gunner first. Swiftly, silently, before the rifleman can react. Then, his company can sweep the ambush from below. A sudden gust rustles the leaves. The moment feels fragile, suspended. Every second he waits tightens the coil inside his chest. He steadies his heartbeat, finds the rhythm, becomes part of the earth beneath him. Then he sees something that freezes him. A 4th German soldier, one he hadn't spotted, emerges from behind a boulder. Young, barely more than a kid, carrying binoculars. A spotter. He steps up beside the machine gunner, scanning the tree line with sharp, anxious eyes. If the boy looks up, if he sees so much as a glint of sunlight on Mercer's barrel, the ambush flips instantly. His men will walk straight into gunfire, and the ridge will become a slaughterhouse. Mercer shifts his aim, but the angle is terrible. The brush blocks his shot. He can kill the gunner cleanly, but not the spotter. Not fast enough. He needs a distraction. Slowly, he eases his hand into his jacket pocket and pulls out something small and innocuous, his brother's compass. The metal is cold against his palm. Heavy. Meaningful. It feels almost wrong to use it. Almost. But survival rarely leaves room for sentiment. He cups it carefully, weighing it, feeling its balance. Then, he tosses it. Not backward. Not forward. Sideways. The compass arcs silently through the air, cutting through brush and vanishing into the ravine with a faint metallic clink. The sound is tiny, almost insignificant. But in a kill zone, where even insects seem too loud, every noise means something. The spotter jerks his head toward the sound. The riflemen adjust, raising their barrels. The machine gunner leans forward, squinting. And in that split second, when all their attention is angled away from him, Mercer moves. He fires once. The crack shatters the still morning air. The bullet strikes the gunner squarely. The man drops instantly, collapsing behind the sandbags. Before the rifleman can react, Mercer adjusts his aim, firing again and again in precise, controlled bursts. The first rifleman collapses backward. The second dives for cover, but is too slow. Mercer's third shot finds him cleanly. 3 shots. 3 seconds. 3 down. But the spotter, the boy, throws himself flat and disappears behind the machine gun nest. Mercer's jaw clenches. That one enemy could ruin everything. He waits, motionless, listening, watching. The boy doesn't reappear. The brush rustles faintly, his crawling, repositioning. Then Mercer hears it. A soft metallic click. Not from a rifle, from a flare pistol. The boy is going to signal reinforcements. If that flare launches, the entire German force Mercer heard marching earlier will descend on this ravine. His battalion won't stand a chance. Mercer scrambles forward, crawling on elbows and knees, rifle pulled tight. He moves faster now, no longer a ghost but a predator closing distance. The brush tears at his jacket. Twigs snap under his weight. Subtlety is over. Only speed matters. As he creeps along the ridge, he catches a glimpse of the boy, huddled between rocks, fumbling with the flare. His hands shake. He's terrified. He's clinging to the one act he believes will save his unit. Mercer steadies himself. He raises his rifle. He draws a breath. But hesitation grips him. The boy is young. Too young. Barely 16 or 17. Fear radiates off him like heat. Mercer sees himself for a moment, sees the farm kid from Ohio who joined the war because he didn't know any better. Because someone told him it was his duty. Because no one explained the cost. For half a second, compassion battles necessity. Then the boy lifts the flare pistol. A streak of red bursts into the sky. The signal. Mercer fires instantly, hitting the boy and knocking him backward. But the flare, it's already soaring, trailing crimson smoke as it rises above the treetops. Then it boasts, blooming into a bright red star that burns against the morning sky. Mercer curses under his breath and wheels around, shouting down to his men below. Move. Now. His company surges forward, rifles blazing, storming the ravine before the Germans can regroup. The ambush collapses under the sudden fury, sandbags shredded, rocks chipped by bullets, enemy silhouettes scattering. But the threat isn't the ambush anymore. It's the reinforcements. The flare has called them like a lighthouse. And somewhere beyond the trees, boots are already moving, many boots, rushing toward the ridge. Mercer leaps down the slope, sliding through mud and brush, rallying with his company as they secure the ambush site. The sergeant grabs him by the shoulder. What happened? Why the flare? Mercer glances at the burning smoke drifting across the sky. They know we're here, he says. And they are coming. He scans the forest ahead, the direction from which the German columns were marching. The dawn light finally reveals the trail, a long shadow stretching through the trees. And in that shadow, movement. Lots of movement. The battalion doesn't just have to survive the ambush. They have to survive what the ambush was meant to delay. Mercer grips his rifle tighter, breath steadying as adrenaline floods his veins. The real fight is minutes away. The real danger hasn't even arrived yet. And once again, someone will have to walk forward first. The forest had fallen silent again, too silent. After the ambush, after the frantic counterattack, after the smoke rolled low over the shattered tree line, the men of the battalion pushed forward in a crawl, step by step. And now, once more, all eyes turned to the man who had to move first. Fifth point, the last and perhaps the darkest. They called these soldiers different names depending on the branch, the country, the moment. Scouts, pathfinders, point men, forward observers. But by late 1944 and into 1945, by the time the Allies were clawing their way through the ruined heart of Central Europe, they were known by something else too. The dead man's lane. It wasn't an official term, of course. No paperwork, no field manual carried it. But the infantry whispered it with a kind of grim reverence. Because if you were assigned point in these final months of the war, you weren't just leading a patrol. You were stepping into a place where the enemy no longer cared about winning, only about dragging as many men down with them as possible. Picture this, February 1945. The town of Komischeit is only a memory now, blackened stone, broken chimneys, nothing alive except the cold. The Hurtgen Forest looms behind, a nightmare of mud and mines and bodies frozen into the ground. Ahead lies Schmidt, the next objective. And at the very front of the column walks Private First Class Stephen Tarr, a 19-year-old from Oklahoma who used to herd cattle before he found himself in this ghost world. He carries his M1 at the low ready. His helmet is pushed down tight. His breath fogs the air. Every step feels loud enough to wake the dead. Behind him, 40 men watch his silhouette between the ruined houses. They are depending on him to read the silence, to smell the danger before it arrives, to see what no one else can. And Ta feels every ounce of it. His commanders don't say it out loud, but the point man isn't expected to survive more than a few operations. Most don't. It's a job that chews through soldiers in days. But Ta keeps walking. What made point men like him different? Not superhuman courage, not reckless bravery. Something more complicated, more human, a strange kind of calm in chaos. A sense for patterns. The ability to feel the rhythm of a battlefield like musicians feel tempo. They could detect when something was wrong even when nothing moved. And today, something is wrong. A loose tarp flutters on a blown-out balcony. A door hangs slightly ajar, but not the way the wind would push it. The snow on a rooftop has a thin, unnatural ridge, like someone disturbed it recently. It isn't enough to act on. It isn't proof. But it is enough to tell him that death is close. Ta raises his fist. The column freezes. You can almost hear the heartbeat of 40 men sync with his. He lowers himself, studies the angles. His training says wait. His nerves say retreat. But the mission says advance. And so he does, one careful step, then another, closing the distance to the doorway that feels like the mouth of a wolf ready to bite. He's 10 feet away when everything erupts. A hidden milligram 42 cuts loose from a cellar window, its muzzle flashes blinking like angry stars. The rounds slice through the air, shattering stone, digging trenches into the snow. Ta dives behind a chunk of concrete, his helmet ringing like a bell. The men behind scramble, seeking cover. The whole town seems to explode with noise in seconds. Ta can feel the vibration of every burst in his chest. But here's the part most people don't realize. The point man's job doesn't end when an ambush begins. It begins. Because he knows the layout. He saw the enemy first. He knows where the angles are, where the machine gun is set, where the blind spots sit like shadows waiting to be used. While everyone else is overwhelmed by the shock, he is already thinking 3 moves ahead. He signals with a sharp hand motion. 2 riflemen peel off to the right, crawling through rubble. Another pair moves left. Ta waits for the rhythm of the milligram 42 to change. And when it pauses to reload, just a heartbeat, he sprints. The world blares. Snow kicks up around his boots. He feels as though he's running through water. But he slides into the doorway, tosses a grenade down the cellar steps, and the explosion sends a burst of heat up his arms. Silence returns. Real silence this time. His men emerge, stunned but alive. Ta stands in the doorway, chest heaving, and for the first time today he realizes his hands are shaking. But no one says a word. They all know what he just saved them from. And yet, he'll be up front again tomorrow. Because someone has to walk into the unknown first. What separated men like Ta from the rest wasn't luck. It was acceptance. A strange peace with the idea that the job chose them, not the other way around. They felt responsible, protective. Some said they could never bear watching someone else take the risk for them. Others said they had a feeling they wouldn't survive the war anyhow, so they'd rather use themselves to shield their friends. And the truth? Many didn't survive. Their names exist mostly in unit diaries, after-action reports, and a few fading photographs. Yet entire companies lived because they walked ahead. Entire missions succeeded because one man was willing to step into the dark without knowing what waited there. As the battalion pushed deeper into Schmidt, Ta kept walking point, street after street, ruin after ruin. Each corner felt like a coin toss with fate. And somewhere inside him, he knew the math. Every successful day only made the next more dangerous. What happened next? Well, it wasn't written in stone. No one could predict it. But the war was entering its final, bloodiest stage, and the men who went first were about to face a new threat, one that no amount of instinct could prevent. Because the enemy was preparing something desperate. Something hidden. Something that would change everything the point men thought they understood about danger.